I can't really tell if my guest today is a pitmaster, evil genius, or just a pyromaniac. Mel Chmilar Jr., Dark Side of the Grill, is my guest today.
Reluctantly.
Hi, this is Terry. Before we start the show, I'd like to thank the people who make it possible. New sponsors, Shauna and Bonnie at homegirls.ca, a top producing team with Remax Professionals. Darth Mum 69, thank you for your 5-star review. And Jane, Joseph, Lorna, and Elsie for your wonderful comments on the YouTube channel. Now on with today's show.
Reluctantly.
Boom.
Boom, just like that, Mel.
Just like that, baby. How are we doing today?
Well, it's terrific. It's great to finally chat with you person to person. We've messaged a fair bit back and forth on social media, but this is the first time in a face-to-face. Nice to see you.
100%, brother. Nice to see you, too. I'm not going to lie to you. Your voice has been honey in my ear for most of my life, so...
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You're an Edmonton boy, grew up in Edmonton, lived here all your life?
Born and raised, brother. Born and raised. Born right into the trades. I was a welder since I was old enough to weld, and that was it. So
right. There you go. That was my first question. Oh, no, that was my third question. Okay. I got a whole bunch of wall full of stuff here that I'm getting. There's just, I honestly don't know where to start with you. Actually, let's start with where you're sitting right now and everything on the shelf behind you.
Okay. Yes. So I'm in my man cave, right? My little hideaway from and I set it up for a bit of a podcast session here, but this is my bourbon. I'm a huge fan of the muddy water, right? So always doing that. And I set up a bit of an HVAC so I can smoke in the house. So that's minus 30 outside. I'm right into that. So it's comfy down here. Definitely comfy. Yeah.
So that's just a full collection of bourbon that you have on the shelves behind you?
Correct.
Where does it start and end? Is it?
It doesn't. It never ends. It's a hobby of mine, right? I'm constantly in the States. I'm constantly like deep down south, and people are always bringing me gifts, right? And you hear about that special year, that special bourbon, and then all of a sudden one pops up, and it's a big thing on the barbecue trail. Before you do any kind of major competition, anything like that. Everyone will have a first thing in the morning. You'll have a breakfast cheers, right, as a good luck, and it's just kind of stuck with me, and yeah, love it.
Well, cheers to that. I'm having an old fashioned myself. I'm not set up for a cigar in the house, but certainly have an old fashioned as we are doing this recording at 7:00 at night. So
awesome! Cheers to that, buddy.
You. And this is a pre-made batch. My daughter, who's a high-end cocktail bartender.
I've been paying attention to her as she's grown into that career. It's amazing.
You know what? Cool. I wonder if there's a little bit of a parallel universe here with what she's doing, traveling the world, mixing drinks for people, and the same thing's happening with you. You're traveling the world cooking meat.
It's the craziest thing in the world, brother, to be now in an industry where my job is to bring a party. And that's literally it. We're going to drop you off in the middle of the jungle. We just want to see everybody that's there smile, make sure they get fed, make sure they have a great time, and keep them up as late as you can. And that's never been a problem. So it's wild. I absolutely love it.
The gregarious personality goes a long way to helping out with that. You know, you talk about being the life of the party and that sort of thing. And I mean, shit, you've got 370,000 followers on Instagram.
So you want to hear the backstory of Instagram and YouTube and how all of this?
Yeah.
I never trusted even Facebook. Me and my ex, we had a joint Facebook. So it was not for me. Like I said, I'm a welder from Alberta. So, we're very reluctant to put your visa on the internet, right? It's one of those things. It's old school out here. So I was not into it at all. One of the guys in the shop, every time I did a barbecue for a safety meeting or we had some kind of, festival thing for our shop, our welding shop, I'd cook all the boys and the few girls barbecue, right? And I noticed this one kid in the back that worked in the wash bay. He kept taking pictures of my food. And after the third or fourth time, I said, you know what? Like, this is really weird, man. Like, what are you doing? He says, well, I put this stuff up on Instagram and like people chat about it and whatever. And he's like, you just make really good food. So I'm putting it up on, and I laughed. I was like, Instagram is for 16-year-old girls to flop around and get in trouble. Like, that's not for guys. What do you mean barbecue, right? 6 months later, I'm in Atlanta the very first time I've ever been in the United States, getting signed up for the pro team with Big Green Egg, which is one of the world's biggest barbecue companies. And just like that, it's been an absolute whirlwind, man. And I actually, when they sent me the first email to ask if I was free, I thought it was a scam. I ignored it for months. And then one of the people on the team, one of the chefs on the team actually reached out to me and said, they've been trying to get a hold of you. And I was like, was that that wasn't a scam? And they're like, no, that's a real thing. You should probably, and then right away searching to find it. And then, next day, call me up, book me a ticket, and out I went.
So the kid that was taking the pictures of you for the Instagram pictures, all the stuff that you were cooking at safety meetings, is he still in your camp? Is he your Instagram? Is he your social media guy?
So funny enough, he started trash talking Wayne Gretzky, and that relationship dissolved really quickly. So he actually lost his job over it, which is, the welding. It's I don't even know where he is now. I know he was from BC, and hopefully he went back there where the.
Yeah. So he denigrated Wayne Gretzky, and that was it. That was no second. No second chance, no third, no three strikes, you're out.
No, that's it. Yeah, the HR at the welding shop had a fun one with that one.
That is a crazy story. Somebody's taking pictures of the stuff you cook. 6 months later, you're the Big Green Egg ambassador. Unbelievable.
So a neat thing is it's primarily an American team, the Big Green Egg Pro team, and I was their one exception. And the reason that they had to make that exception was in the main office in Atlanta, they have a retail store. People kept coming in there asking for parts that I had on my Big Green Egg that were like modified parts. So there were parts that they didn't even sell.
Okay.
And then they got sick of it. So they kept reaching out to me to give me the stock caps. And I'm like, I don't want stock caps. I bought fancy stainless steel ones. Like, I don't, it just never even dawned on me. And then that's how I ended up on the pro team. So
you were doing some custom stuff, welding it up yourself. Is that what, am I assuming correctly?
Kind of, yeah. So like my original one, I had the machinist engraved dark side in the handle and stuff like that. And you understand different companies, they don't want any aftermarket anything. They want everything to be stock as possible. So it's pretty funny. Yeah.
Wow. This is, so you inadvertently made yourself into an international barbecue superstar. You're basically a rock star in the industry.
Well, this is, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I have a lot of fun in a lot of countries.
Hey, you can break your arm patting yourself on the back, but if it's justified, then that's why you got two arms, right?
No, that's being on stage in Australia is where it takes my breath away. I'm headed back there again in a couple weeks. They have a big event called Meat Stock, and the biggest one they had, I think it was 35,000 people through the door. There's a picture of me sitting on stage explaining barbecue in the winter to all of these people who have never seen snow. And it's just a sea of people, and they're all just like, it's insane. And then you get out in front of the barbecue with those same people, and everyone's had a few beers, and all of a sudden, literally, you feel like you're on stage with Ozzy. You know what I mean? They're right there. You can start a chant, and they'll start chanting with you, and it's like cooking. It's the craziest thing, but people get right into it. So,
do you have an entrance theme like WWE?
Yeah, I should. That'd be awesome. Yeah, it would be stroke. That's what it would be at. There you go, right there. That's.
Oh my God, this is crazy. Well, hey, before we get too far into things, we're getting comfortable, getting to know each other. Tell me about Mel Chmilar Sr.
So, back in the 60s and the 70s, Edmonton used to call him Mustang Mel. He had a 67 solid axle gasser Mustang that he used to speed around, and he had to paint it 3 or 4 times because the police kept on him about the speeding, and they were able to just go to his house and wait for him. So he'd actually paint his car. And there was a racer from, I want to say Vancouver or Surrey. He used to race at the Castrol Raceway. And there was a guy named Mr. Clean that actually came here in a super stock car to look for him on the street. And it's just the stories that he told me as a kid were just unfathomable. And then you end up, I'm 10 years old, 11 years old, hanging around the garage, playing darts. All of his buddies are around. And then you start hearing other people saying these stories, and it's all like checking out, and it just blows your doors off. Like, it's crazy. getting 2 feet of air with your front tires and a Mustang going down the high-level bridge in second gear. And then buddy's like, yeah, my pregnant wife was in the back. I'm like, oh my God, this is insanity. You know, it's crazy. It was insane. So I grew up with very little rules, right, and regulations and stuff. And I just...
And parental guidance.
Exactly. Like he built a big GMC, a Blazer with a lift kit. And he got the old curb guards from Superstore. They cut them off in the parking lot. They were full of concrete. And he welded them into a front bush bar for this absolute monster truck. The thing was like 6 feet tall. I could walk underneath it. And he threw an old car hood, like a 50s car hood, upside down with a rope. And he was pulling us in the snow in the neighbor's field, right? And that this was normal shenanigans for like a cold winter day out in Parkland County, right? Just giving her all the time. And I love telling these stories down in the States now, right? It's something else because it's very divided.
Normal schmilanigans.
Exactly. So yeah, it's he still half doesn't believe that this is real. And he's seen me on Global, he's seen me on CTV, he's like, but like, how do you get paid? Like, where's their money? Like, you have to go back to welding right away. Like, this is insane. And I'm like, well, no, no, I don't. And I'm not planning on it. So, and he just, yeah. So
this is unbelievable. You know what? I just off because it's Mel Chmilar Jr. I thought, well, there's got to be a senior. Nobody just tacks a junior onto their name without a story. And I thought, I'll ask him about his dad. Maybe he was a good dad, or he was a, absent dad, or, well, I never knew my dad, or he was messy, I thought something like that. I didn't think that there was going to be Edmonton folklore about the guy.
Yeah. No, he earned it. He earned it. My pop's been an absolute weapon growing up. So lots of the parents of kids growing up, and I grew up in the 80s, right? And they were still afraid to drop their kids off at my place for my birthday parties because of him. So,
Well, cheers to your dad for being an absolute legend. That
right on,
terrific. Unbelievable. Okay, so here's Mel. He's cooking dinner safety meetings for the welder buddies at camp or wherever it is. And some little doofus that doesn't like Wayne Gretzky is taking pictures. 6 months later, you end up on the Green Egg ambassador team. And what did you always have kind of an entrepreneurial spirit kind of thing, or was it?
Yeah, I was born with the hustle, man. So I think I had 10 small businesses in my head that never even started because I never pulled the trigger. That was the thing. Being a welder, like you're kind of already the rock star in Alberta, so you're sitting pretty. And to walk away from where I had myself situated was insane. And it was like extraordinary circumstances that made me actually jump off the cliff to actually do this. There was a 90% chance that I was going to quit the barbecue instead of the welding because I just couldn't fathom not welding anymore. And I just had myself a little mental, I don't know, and I jumped off the cliff and I just did it.
Were you a pipeline welder or just
So I used to build centrifuges. They separated oil from solids. So big stainless steel machines that spin. They got them in every plant. Very technical stuff. Very, very high-end, technical, fun stuff. So the cash was there, right? And the stability was there for sure. So to walk away from something like that was pretty gnarly.
Was it at a location close to home, or was it? At camp.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it was in Edmonton.
Yeah,
And
I did my stint up north. Every welder does, right? Unfortunately, I have a bit of a wild streak to me.
You don't say.
Yeah, me and Fort Mac don't get along very well. All of a sudden, I'm like a carpet layer up there. You know what I mean? Like, where'd he go for a week? Well, wait, he'll be back on Friday. Like, that's, yeah.
So, being a welder, did I guess fire in the hole kind of came naturally then for you?
That's exactly right. So, I always had tiger torches, even just kicking around the house for weeds and stuff. This is just simple whatever. First time I posted on the, well, yeah, you can use them for anything, man. They're great little. So yeah, right away I got a ton of backlash for that, lighting charcoal up in a small barbecue with a big tiger torch, right? And I was able to say, look, I'm an actual trained professional. Like, you can't. I have courses and classes and tickets in this exact operation. You can't tell me I can't do it. and it just kind of turned into a joke. And then I ended up trademarking it. So now I own it.
I saw that you're available for catering, and this is something I wasn't going to ask until later, but now that you've laid the, former occupation was welder, it looks like the space shuttle that you've got, because for your catering company, you pull this gigantic tube full of fire out to somebody's wedding or family reunion, and like, what are the dimensions of this, and how was that made?
So the first one that I built myself, I had built several smaller ones in the backyard and stuff like that, but the first monster that I built was in the beginning of COVID. When we got locked down and we couldn't go out anymore, I went absolutely nuts, because I'm not that type of person to just stay in a cage. I couldn't do it. So I ended up just living in the shop, building a gigantic offset smoker. So she's 750 gallons with a 14-foot stack, insulated firebox, and it can cook about 1,000 pounds of brisket at a time. It's an absolute monster. And I built the whole thing myself. I had never seen one, even though I know that's classic barbecue in Texas. The original barbecue started kind of with this sort of system. And I had to rely on other builders in the States and watching YouTube videos and then taking screenshots of different parts and components. And then I just put her together myself and then dialed it in the shop, and away I went.
I find that unbelievable. It's one thing. Everybody, even if you're a welder, it's art. Yeah, I mean, there's I know welders who can, just do a bead or whatever around a pipe, but I also know welders who can make incredible creations, artistic creations. But it sounds to me like this is a combination of the two. I referenced it as the space shuttle, but it honestly is. It's 14-foot high stacks where even if the rat hole was still around, you wouldn't be able to take it underneath there.
Well, so this is my Ukrainian engineering now. That 14-foot stack actually folds down, and I have a worm gear with a boat winch that I can actually draw it up with a drill. So that's exactly. That's.
And I'm not sure, how long is it? Like, how long, what the length and width?
24 feet. 24 feet. And she's got a live fire table on the one side of it. So I have all kinds of attachments and grills, and I just start a live fire, and I can cook anything hanging. I can cook whole pigs on a clamshell rack. It's absolutely deadly. We did a huge farm-to-table dinner, I think 2 years ago, just out in Parkland County. I forget what the farm was, but everybody brings stuff in from all around the farms, and then we have just a gigantic dinner. I think we fed 250 or 300 people in the county there that night, and it was just crazy. Live fire romaine lettuce. So I put olive oil and salt and pepper on the romaine hearts, split open, and then you smoke them over coals that are roasting, but just enough to get the smoke flavor on that romaine without actually getting it rubbery at all. And people just went nuts. They're like, where did you learn this stuff? This is insanity. You throw the potatoes right in the coals, char them up just a little bit. They get so much flavor on them, and the ashes don't stick to the potatoes because the ashes are so hot. So you can just pull the potatoes right out of the coals, crush them up, and away you go. And they leave that nice smoky flavor on there.
So where did you learn all of this stuff? You're talking about like making a Caesar salad with smoked romaine hearts. And was this from a Ukrainian baba or something like that in the family, or what?
My culinary background does come from Bubba, right? I spent all of my time in the kitchen because that's where the food was coming from. It's usually where all the people ended up. Like, I was just all the time hiding in the kitchen. So I learned a ton in there. And then we used to make our own sauerkraut, stuff like that. We used to also get a ton of fish from out on the West Coast. We got half our family is up on Vancouver Island. So we were constantly getting fish when I was growing up. We learned a ton about smoking fish with alder. And then being a beef forward Alberta, there was always a barbecue. It wasn't traditional Texas barbecue. It was our style of barbecue, throwing steaks on there and stuff like that. But I grew up around the fire. We're going trout fishing at the local hole. You start a fire and you got a cast iron pot. That's it. And that's how you cook. And this has been common for me since growing up. So it was very easy to take in the rest of it, right? When I first saw my original live fire chef, his name is Francis Mullman. He's out of Argentina. He lives in Patagonia now, which is exactly like Alberta. It's the exact same landscape. And he left like a 4-star Michelin restaurant to go back to the bush to cooking just on the open fire in our backyard, essentially in Argentina. And to know that that was where he ended up, from hitting the absolute top of the cooking world, and know that that's kind of what I'm playing with now, it's wild. It's wild to know that you could skip like 40 years of stress and whatever. And you're obviously standing on the shoulders of very high-end professional chefs. So you still learn a little bit of French cuisine, a little bit of Italian and stuff like that. But it's incredible to be able to give that kind of food to people who've never had it before, especially out here. It's wild. I love it.
Reluctantly.
This podcast is reluctantly sponsored by the real estate team of homegirls.ca, a top producing team at Remax Professionals. If you are buying or selling in the Edmonton area, Shauna and Bonnie can handle everything with strong industry connections to mortgage brokers, home inspectors, lawyers, and contractors to support every step. They can sell your current home and find your new place, whether you're expanding as a family, downsizing as empty nesters, or looking for a commercial space for your growing business. I also know they can help you find your new place in the Edmonton region if you're migrating from Ontario, BC, or any other part of Canada for that matter. I first met Shauna and Bonnie 10 years ago when we were beginning to downsize, and they have been our trusted real estate advisors through buying and selling no less than 6 properties. I've also recommended them to many friends who want real, relatable people with a personalized, hands-on approach. New home, investment, recreational, even commercial. Homegirls.ca is the website. Email info is there, and you can call them at 780-517-HOME.
Reluctantly.
Who eats all the food you cook? Every time I turn on your Instagram channel, you're cooking a 7-bone this and a whole goddamn pig and 17 yards of beef intestines and chicken brains and all kinds of stuff. Like, who's eating it all?
So one of my neighbors is he's retired. I want to say he's a sergeant for the RCMP. I don't know. When I had the whole front line of the Edmonton Eskimos in the backyard, it smelled really weird in the whole neighborhood for a little bit there. There were a lot of people burning what weren't cigars, right? And he sent me a text. He's like, is everything okay over there? Like, what's going on? There's like a bunch of 8-foot people, and there's, and we were cooking whole lambs to make tacos. So we had the whole front line of the Edmonton Eskimos back here over fire just to make tacos out of whole lambs. And they're like just blown away, but it was just something fun to do. I had met one of them who had a culinary background, and one thing led to the other, and there's the whole front line right there. And it was just amazing. Like, most of my leftovers, I'm going to be honest with you, I got a huge family, so they rip through a lot of it, but the boys still come around from the shop all the time. So I still doggy bags whenever possible. And yeah, it's not me. I'd die. I'd die. If I ate like that every single day, I would die. So
you're telling me this, going back to this Elks Eskimos thing and the fellows in the backyard, you're telling me that tacos aren't made with the El Paso shells and stuff in the box with that packet of sauce?
So a good friend of mine, Texan, right? First time I was in Texas, he's like, I'm going to blow your doors completely off. We're going to a little restaurant called Mary's Tacos. We walk in there, and not one person speaks English. There's about 30 people in a kitchen that's maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, and they're hand making everything from scratch. Flour tortillas, and they got the griddles and everything right there. And I looked at him, the first bite I had, I'm like, I have never had a taco in my life. And he just started laughing. He's like, first of all, you say it weird. Like our accent, it is what it is, right? He's like, but just the look on your face was like, and that was the thing. There's no sour cream. There's no shredded cheese. Like, how are we doing this? This is crazy. This is a completely different animal. And now I understand. It's the white people tacos, man. They're still, I love them. I still get super excited when I have them, but they're not tacos. They're not. So
we had some last week. And then we had them the second night because we had some left over.
I love it. Yeah. I put a class on, barbecue class in Newfoundland. We're out there, and they have all the freshest seafood you can imagine, right? Even at their Sobeys, right? You can get mackerel that's been caught yesterday or today. And they pull out a can of cocktail weenies. And they're all like huddled around these cocktail weenies like they're oysters or something. They were, I thought they were joking. But it turns out it's a real big thing. These cocktail weenies are a huge deal for them down there. And I was like, you kidding? This is This is a real thing. Oh yeah, so here I am making seafood chowder and whatever I can, and they're all freaking out about cocktail weenies and fresh mustard. It was just insane.
I have to confess, my wife and I had a pork tenderloin tonight, and we had it with that stuff.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
I went to Backyard Barbecue in St. Albert.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
carry your stuff, and we'll talk more about the dark side of the grill stuff, because I got I have some questions about the cow cane.
Yeah, that's the one.
Want to know how that came about. But so you said you were teaching a class. Is being based in the Edmonton area, and I know you travel all over the world, but are you kept busy doing classes of any sort in the Edmonton area when you're home and have some downtime from all your traveling?
So it's a weird kind of, I don't even know how to explain this one, but in Edmonton, other than the catering gigs, there's kind of nothing here to do. I'll do stuff with Alberta Beef, Canada Beef. They got the Farm Fair International, which is in November, right? That's a ton of fun. And sometimes there's a little thing with K-Days or whatever, or getting on the news, whatever, fun stuff like that. Every once in a while, there's a radio bit, not on K97, but there are radio bits from time to time, which are nice, right? And that's, but yeah, there's just not a lot going on. Even like next weekend, I'm out in Calgary at the Boat and Sportsman Show, and they called me up because I've worked the Stampede before. So they're like, you're familiar with everything here. You can come down and do whatever. And then when they realized who I was and they went through my stuff, then they're like, hey, you want to come back for Edmonton? I said, sorry, I'm already flying out again. Like, it's constantly. So yeah, it's weird. I haven't done classes here, but I can sell out classes like crazy in Newfoundland and Australia and all over the place. And I've never really kind of thought about it. When I'm here, I'm just kind of here. It's weird. I don't know.
It's kind of like your downtime island or something like that, I guess.
No, because I get instantly restless. One of the lines, I forget which band it was, but it was the whole thing. When you're on the road on tour, you're dying to get home. And 10 minutes after you're home, you're dying to get back on tour. Like, it's just a thing, right?
That's every musician.
Yeah, that's it.
Doesn't matter. Okay,
Yeah.
so you just kind of breezed over it real quick, but I think it's important to mention that you're the spokesperson for Alberta Beef, the Canadian Beef Association, and International Farm Fair. What kind of time does that take up over the course of your month or year or whatever for those, aside from the fall thing that you were talking about?
It's not too bad. They have small projects for me here and there. They'll have videos. We did a big butchering series, like a 12-part butchering series. So that's fun, but it's not a huge amount of time invested in that kind of stuff.
Do you have any training in butchery or the art of butchering?
So everything I do is backyard. That's my claim to fame, is that hunting in Alberta, right? If you turn 14 and you can't skin a deer, there's something wrong. So I've been around more than my share of carcasses, right? And I know how to. So it's second nature. It's crazy the amount of chefs that haven't ever tackled anything like that. But now that I'm traveling, I'm seeing a lot of different backgrounds. We're kind of weird up here. We're like if you're at all familiar with Game of Thrones, we're like north of the wall, right? It's crazy. I didn't actually think we were like that until I realized that 90% of Canadians live 10 minutes from the border, which is crazy.
Okay, so with all of your traveling, Memphis in May. So you go down to Memphis, Tennessee. You're down there. You're cooking. What's on the barbecue? Memphis, I would imagine that there's. Is there crawfish, or is like or is that not far enough south? Is that more of a New Orleans kind of thing?
That's a Louisiana deal there. Memphis, you're doing ribs. You're doing pulled pork. Turkey breast is real big over there. They're not beef forward. Memphis is more of a pork town. So a lot of smoked pork in the Memphis in May. It's a gigantic competition. I think it's the second biggest competition in the world, or at least in the States, whereas that's where it all matters anyway.
Are you down there as a competitor, or are you down there as a showcase?
I'm a showcase. So I'll do some stand-up demos, a few Q&As, and then I'll be cooking the whole time. They put me in a VIP area, so you have to get tickets to go through the whole backside, but it's the only part of the show where you can actually eat the food, stuff like that. So I cater while I'm in the back 40 doing the VIP area. And then all of the international ticket holders, they're in the VIP area, as well as all the judges. So I'm feeding the judges and walking them through stuff with barbecue and what to expect and what they're looking out for, that kind of thing.
Jesus, you are a rock star. It's unbelievable to hear about all of this.
It's crazy, man. It's every day I'm blessed, man.
I want to check in with a couple of more locations, but first, just something that just dawned on me because you mentioned COVID and how you were stir crazy and started building stuff and welding and making your rig and whatnot. When did this start? The dark side of the grill established in
2017.
2017. So it's that recent.
2017 was when I was like, I might start catering and I'll need insurance and I should probably incorporate. And that was the day I pulled the number and started actually thinking about doing it. Not as a replacement to welding, but to, side cash, right?
And of course you reported every cent to the
course. 100%.
Okay. So Memphis in May, we talked about, Memphis is a pork town. That makes sense. And then another one, is it the same sort of thing that you would go to Key West International? Is that the same deal where you're showcasing, or is that?
Key West it's its own beast, man. Never have I been to a place that I felt at home instantly like Key West, Florida. They have wild roosters that live there that have more civil rights than human beings because they're native to the island and they're pirate roosters. They were brought by pirates, right? And it's funny, the guy who runs Ernest Hemingway's distillery, me and him, like, he's the owner, we got absolutely loaded one day and he just almost fell out of his chair. He's like, I just realized you're one of these damn roosters. You just come out of nowhere and you can survive on liquor and you can just live behind my dumpster. You won't even freeze. He's like, it was hilarious. But yeah, so the Key West Invitational it's a barbecue competition in a resort that's like the farthest tip of Florida. It's all palm trees. It's super hot. There's gigantic sharks that live in the bay, right in the marina. And you have to barbecue in the heat, which is fine because you're fully refreshed. They have all kinds of liquor sponsors and cigar sponsors. And then we do a fishing competition. So the original Key West Invitational was called the Rub and Tug Invitational.
Charming.
That was perfect. It was, I don't know how they got as many sponsors as they did with such big names with that. They had to eventually change it, but that was the original, was the Rub and Tug Invitational. And the second day is fishing, where you go out and you have to catch as many species as you can. And we're catching sharks, we're catching barracudas, we're catching like everything you could think of. If you landed an octopus, you got points for the octopus. It was insane. So we got one of the professional guides. Everybody gets their own captain with their boat. And the guy we got was an absolute rock star. So we just stuck with him. We're 3 years deep now. We've won every year and just slayed it. But to sit there with the biggest legends in barbecue, and I mean, guys, Tuffy Stone won like, I think 16 world championships or something like. It's insane, the level of stardom that you hang out with, and you're sitting there with a rum in your hand and a cigar, and they're sitting there with a rum and a cigar, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, and no one cares because you're on island time, right? And it's just the coolest thing in the world to hang out with these people and learn real honest tips and tricks, which is why I can put on the classes I put on. I've learned so many things from these guys in such a relaxed atmosphere that they wouldn't even put in their classes. You know what I mean? So it's the Key West Invitational is definitely a life-changing event. On the tail end of the last day or the second last day, we go out to an actual sand dune, a gigantic sand dune. Next stop is Cuba. So it takes us quite a while. They have gigantic pontoon boats, plus all of our guided fishing boats. We all end up there. There's about 150 people on this sand dune. And as the tide comes in, the sand dune disappears. And we have grills that we're cooking. You end up standing just in the ocean for miles. There's just ocean. There's no land. There's no trees. There's no nothing. Everyone's smoking cigars. Everyone's drinking the Monster hard seltzer. People were there with their bikini chicks, and they're throwing just left and right. It was the wildest thing. They had a cowboy from Texas, big time record label. He's out there playing his guitar on the front of a boat while someone's hand rolling cigar. Like, it was the craziest thing you've ever seen. Maritime law, because now there's no land. It was like, for a barbecue competition, it made no sense. And the joke there was, if we were all millionaires, you couldn't pay to have that experience. There's no way. You'd never be able to find that. And that's the neatest part of my journey right now, is that when I end up in someone's backyard in Brazil, in a jungle, there's no way that I would have been there otherwise. It's just a freak coincidence that I'm there, sitting in their hot tub, eating snake, just, it's crazy. It's insane. And just blessed every day for it.
Barracuda seems like it would be a really bony fish.
Yeah.
The scuba diving in the Cayman Islands, I saw barracudas up close, because they're blind as a bat, but they have really good sonar or FishDar or radar or whatever it's called. And I was taking pictures. I got some really good pictures of it. But as soon as you click that camera, the shutter goes, and then the barracuda came right down to me. I just kind of faded back onto the floor of the ocean, and it came by and swapped me in the face with its tail as it swam by. But seeing it up close, the teeth are all gnarly, sticking out of their mouth and stuff like that.
Yeah, everything there wants to hurt you. We had a lobster captain. He's a professional lobster, so we also went diving for lobsters. That was the other one. So you want to catch lobsters, you want to catch fish, and then you have to cook it, and you get judged on that as well. But the lobster captain, who's been down there for 30 years catching lobster, was a bit like Bill Murray. As soon as he heard my accent, started playing some Rush. We ended up in the marina at 4:00 in the morning, and he convinced me to go for a dive because I was just hot in my t-shirt, still sweating, whatever. So I went for a swim in the marina. The next morning, an old lady on the dock, we're all loading the boat. She's like, "Are you the Canadian that went swimming with the 15-foot bull shark out there?" And he laughed just like that. That's the funny thing. I wasn't laughing. I was scared to death. I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Yeah, we have a resident bull shark. And the fact that you didn't get eaten was pretty crazy." So that was the joke for the rest of the trip, was that I swim with bull sharks, right? That's the...
Oh, man. And you just kind of breezed over it real quick, sitting in a hot tub in somebody's backyard in Brazil. This has taken you all over the world, not just in Canada and the United States. You've been to Australia, you've been to Brazil. Where are some of the other places that stick out that where you just go like, I didn't even know how I got here?
Oh, yeah, no, it's been New Zealand, right? This year, we've booked the UK, Scotland, Guatemala, and Japan. So it's not stopping anytime soon. It's just getting crazier.
This is just so mind-blowing to me. Yeah. And you wouldn't believe how happy I am because I think this is incredible.
It makes no sense. Like, honestly, sure, I can cook. I'm really good at cooking. Again, I'm being bashful. I'm actually a weapon behind the grill. But I never thought that this could have been possible. Never in a million years. And same my dad says now, he's like, don't stop. Whatever's happening, just don't stop. Just fly right to the end, wherever it takes you.
Reluctantly.
Hey there, it's Terry. Thanks for making it this far through the show. I'd like to make you a part of the show as well. On my website, reluctantlypodcast.com, on the right-hand side of the page is a microphone where you can chime in about the show. And down at the bottom on the left-hand side is a donate button. Your support of the show is appreciated to help with production costs and so on. Reluctantlypodcast.com.
Reluctantly.
When I started up this podcast, I wanted it to be people that I find interesting, and a lot of it just simply because of my experience with working at the radio station. It ends up being, musicians or comedians, sports personalities, and that sort of thing. So when I started doing it, I said it's going to be, comedians, musicians, sports personalities. I really like entrepreneurial people, but I also like weirdos, wackos, and nut bars.
Yep.
So my question is, how many boxes do you check off?
I think I hit every demographic. I think I hit every, it's a real weird position for me to be in. Even Big Green Egg, they're like, when we call you and it's like calling a sledgehammer to hang a painting, right? It's what you get. And it depends on the day, depends on the event, but there's a 95% chance that I'm going to go extra just because that's what I do, right? We were in Fairhope, Alabama, first thing in the morning, and I had actually brought my robe. I have a robe that's like kind of one of my claims to fame. The Russians went absolutely nuts. It was minus 30, and I was in 3 feet of snow using my fingers in the mason jar to break my beer so that I could keep drinking it while I'm cooking a brisket in my robe and flip-flops. And they went absolutely nuts for that. In Siberia, they're like, I didn't know we could cook in this. Like, we've been out here living in the same stuff for forever. So they loved it. They absolutely loved it. But so I brought the robe out to Fairhope, Alabama, and it was crazy hot. And they had the news station there, and they were out prepping an alligator for the news station on a table kind of outside of my hotel room. And we had a whole bunch of stuff to cook that day for TV and whatever. And when I walked out in the robe, the event promoter that had all of this stuff put together, he asked the news crew to stop for a minute. And then he swapped me out with the head chef to start prepping the alligator in my bathrobe, sipping on a coffee, right? And there I am on live TV, like in Fairhope, Alabama, in my bathrobe. And they're like, you're Canadian and you're in a bathrobe and you're prepping an alligator. It just, the whole thing was so obscure. And he printed a picture of that off because you got the Gulf of Mexico behind us and all kinds of, and he printed that picture off and it's hanging up in his office now. And he's like, that's the weirdest thing that, like, we couldn't let that go. We had to do something with it. It was just so.
That's terrific. So that's just adds to the lore, really, is what it does.
Exactly.
Now, my question is, have you ever played any sports?
When I was a kid, Dad didn't like the bill that came with the hockey. I was too rough for soccer. And then it just switched to things with engines. So,
do you know how to play an instrument?
Stairway to Heaven and Smoke on the Water on the guitar.
Oh, you can play guitar? Okay.
Well, no, I got 2 licks. That's it. That's all my brother would teach me, and then
okay,
gave up on me. Yeah.
All right. So musician, so sports, no. Entrepreneur, yes. You're a funny dude, so I'm going to put in comedy. So that's entrepreneur. Comedy, yes. Weirdo, wacko, nut bar, yes. On all accounts. So you're batting about 750 on the description of the people I have on this podcast. That's terrific.
Awesome. I love it.
Okay, so I am a barbecue moron. I turn on my barbecue, and every time I do it, it starts a fire. I have, you've seen our place out at Shoe Swap, our Shoe Swap C-Can. I've got a Weber 4-burner out there, which works a little bit better for me. And then I've got a Weber here, but it's kind of a goofy. You turn on the first element and it's the one closest to you, and then you turn on the second one and it's up the side and down the middle. You turn on the third and it's at the back, and like I don't know what you call those, or it's clearly more advanced than my ability to cook anything.
Yeah,
and I just don't enjoy it. We're considering a green egg, but the thing about it is it's charcoal and it's fire and that sort of thing. It's a different kind of cooking, isn't it?
Yes, it is and it isn't. My big green egg, I can go out there in minus 30, open the lid. If I have a lot of charcoal in there, I can just shake the charcoal up and refire it. I use my little torch and I sit there for, 20, 30 seconds, get it just red in the middle, open the vent a bit, put the grate back down, and come back 5 minutes later and it's at 300. Cook a steak on it, no problem. So it literally takes 5 minutes to warm up, 10 minutes to warm up. And literally, you just light it with the torch, or you put a handful of new charcoal in there. Away you go. It's actually not that complicated at all.
I guess for me, a charcoal barbecue, it makes me think back to the old hibachis, or those round things that had the 3 legs and would tip over every time the dog went by. Yeah. All of a sudden, charcoal briquettes all spread all over the sidewalk into the dry grass, setting things on fire and creeping up the apple tree and stuff in the backyard. So it was anxiety ridden for me.
Yeah. Well, so the big green eggs are a lot heavier. They're not going anywhere. If you knock one of those over, it's a pretty catastrophic event, right? The best way I can explain, if you're worried about fire with one of those, you literally shut the vent and you shut the lid and it just goes out.
Is that right?
You could have a gigantic grease fire going in there, and I mean gigantic. You could have a 6-foot ball of flames coming out of there, And you can use your tongs to grab the lid. You shut it. It just goes out.
Because it just cuts off all the oxygen and nothing can burn.
That's it. So I actually deep fry on mine. I'll do Nashville hot chicken in a Dutch oven over the coals. And if it ever caught fire, you just shut the lid. It's actually way safer than a gas grill because gas grills are breathing like crazy. So once you catch a grease fire, you can shut that lid all you want. That sucker's still going to burn.
And what about the residual stuff, the drippings and whatnot from whatever you're cooking going into the coals and stuff?
That's all flavor, baby. That's what you want. You want her dripping. Those steaks, when they just start dripping on the charcoal and you get that smoke, it comes right back up. It's just flavoring your steak. It's actually just perfect. You can't argue. You ask any chef, Andrew Fruger, Chef Andrew Fung, he owns 19.
Okay, yeah.
He has a big green egg in his kitchen, which he uses just to sear his steaks off. So he'll still properly sous vide them. Everything's perfect, but he'll actually use a big green egg, fire it off at the end, get that flavor, that kiss of charcoal on there.
I've been to 19 in St. Albert. I'm just trying to think if I've seen that in there because you can kind of see into the kitchen with all of the...
So I think he's the one on the west end, I believe.
Okay, quick. So on your Instagram, which is Dark Side of the Grill, you have the Linktree link, and it takes you to a number of different things. And your website, we should talk about that too, darksideofthegrill.com. But your Linktree takes you to the thing, as a big green egg ambassador, you have a code, discount code or something like that. I'm sure that it gets a kickback to your...
Oh, yeah, that's for the Canucks.
Yeah.
Everybody north of the border, that link works. Yeah.
Okay. And then there's the different models. So if I'm just trying to get into, like, I really wish, my brother's amazing at it. And not my brother, my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Jody's brother, Jamie, is a phenomenal barbecuer. And he actually bought barbecue off me when we downsized into a condo in downtown Edmonton. He bought one of my Webers. So he's got that, and he does amazing. But so I'm looking, like the extra large big green egg or the large egg. Which one do you need?
So myself, I'm stuck on the XL. The XL has the most options, just because time is always a factor. So in an XL, you can have the two different deflector plates. You put one on one side, you leave the other one out. So now you have half indirect and half direct. And you can just leave it like that. So you can pull half of your grid out real quick, light your charcoal, put it back down. So you got a nice thick ribeye. It's just for you. You're going to eat the ribeye in bed and watch a sitcom, whatever, right? Literally, you can throw that ribeye on the indirect. You come out there 45 minutes later, it's at 110, right? You throw it over to the direct side. It starts dripping that fat into those coals. It sears up. Now you're standing there for 2 minutes playing in the fire like a kid in a candy store anyway, because it's the best part of it, right? Flipping that steak over the fire. You pull it off on the plate, let it rest. You have the most perfect charcoal kissed steak of your life, like 45 minutes. Low, slow, nice, easy. You can do it super quick too. You can crank it up and do it super quick, but that's how I like to do mine. Slower is always better, but after cooking on charcoal like that and dialing it in, just figuring it out a little bit, it almost breaks my heart. As a kid, I grew up, we'd go to the sawmill, right? Tom Goodchild was like, kind of a friend of the family. We did all that kind of stuff. And that prime rib, I grew up on that prime rib, and you knew somebody graduated or somebody died or someone's getting married, but it was a big deal. And I remember one day my mom was like, your prime rib's better. I think next time we'll just invest in like more bottles of wine and we'll just stay home. And it blew my doors off because I was like, and I think I was 14, maybe 15. And it just, I was flabbergasted because it's always been so good, right? So,
and I knew Tom before he passed away, and I know Tasker, and and some golfing, charity golf tournaments and stuff with. So that's quite the compliment.
Yeah, no, it was for my mom to say that, it really took me back because that was always such a staple growing up.
I'm sorry, I'm just distracted a little bit because I'm actually on your Linktree right now for the biggreenegg.ca. And I'm looking at the XL with the wings on it. I see there's a stainless steel fire bowl. Is that necessary? Or what is that?
Well, they all have their added features. Their pros and their cons, right? Cons are always cost. But for a decent rig, it's not that hard. The stainless steel firebowl is good. You can pop it out and clean it out real quick. New charcoal, bada boom, bada bing. So that helps. And then the expander unit with the 2 plates. That's the key. After that, it's all just toys, right? You can get a rotisserie for it. Up in Canada, they do a rotisserie, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, there's a lot of attachments. You can get planchas, so you can do smash burgers. You can do a whole breakfast on a plancha over the charcoal. It's a beautiful thing, man.
Then I see you've got your weed controller there.
Yep.
Yeah, you got your trucker hats and stuff. Where do you get all of the charcoal? Like, is it special stuff that you have to put in to use to cook?
No, it's all the same. Like you can use the Kingsford stuff from Lowe's or Rona or whatever. It's all. I'm not going to say it's the same. You get what you pay for, but any of it works.
What do you use?
I use the Big Green Egg lump charcoal. So a little bit of insider information: Canadian Big Green Egg lump charcoal is all maple, and it's as pure as you can ever imagine. Whereas Kingsford, you've got 2x4s and screws and your odd piece of concrete. In the Big Green Egg lump charcoal, it's just straight maple wood. It's because it's so cheap and plentiful up here, and they can't export it into the States. So It keeps the cost relatively low, and you can cook pizza on it. You can cook nachos. That's what actually made me buy my first Big Green Egg, believe it or not, was nachos. One of the mechanics in the shop I was working at brought me over for dinner. We were playing poker, and he cooked a gigantic plate of nachos, and just the kiss of smoke. And, the cheese gets like brown, and it's like a snowflake. It'll break. The cheese does that like crazy on a pizza pan with nachos on it. So after that, I was sold. I'm like, obviously it can cook steaks, but I didn't know it could cook nachos. Like, that's insane.
There's other little goodies I'm noticing on here too, and like I got to tell you, there's a little bit of a selfish notion that came when I reached out to have you on the podcast, is because I wanted to know a lot about this stuff for my own benefit. And the Big Green Egg kits. I know you pay a little more, but you got a little more goodies and stuff like that, and the egg expander is included in some of the kits and so on. So, I mean, instead of thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll get this afterward, or maybe I'll get this afterward, it's best to get everything all at the same time, or what?
No, that's just like talking to a mechanic about their tools. If you are a mechanic and you work every day, you've got Snap-on. You've got a Snap-on toolbox because you're sick of things breaking, right? You meet your fly-by-night contractor guy, he's got Power Fist, right? And you know exactly what you're dealing with the Power Fist. The hammers are so cheap, you can buy 20. Well, you're going to use all 20 by the end of the job. So that's why it is what it is. So Big Green Egg, for me, has been like the Snap-on brand. It was always the warranty for absolutely everything. If you chip your spatula or your knife or what, they'll just exchange it 100%. And the crazy thing is, I have one from 1984 that still works. And if it cracks at all, they'll still replace it. It's kind of stupid, actually, because I do trade shows for them in the States. And an Uber driver once, he was asking me all kinds of questions because they got Traeger, and Traeger came out with the Wi-Fi, and they had like satellite adjusting briskets and all kinds of crazy stuff. And he's like, well, what do you do? I said, well, I get brought down here to tell everybody that it still does exactly what it did before. And it's still really good at it. Like, that's my job, right? Like, there's not a ton of innovation because it just works and it's amazing at it. So they don't need all the gimmicks and stuff like that.
I'm really leaning toward the extra large Big Green Egg kit.
It's definitely the way to go. Bang for your buck. That's because if you get right into it, and I got guys that send me pictures of presents they get on Christmas Day that their wife buys them, right? They got Big Green Egg underwear and Big Green Egg socks, and they got toques, and it's insane. When I go to the UK, they have a pair of, I think they're like a knockoff Adidas with the green suede. And they had to like dig to find me size 13s, but they found size 13s. They look like a 1970s Adidas shoe with the shag suede in green. And they're like, these are Big Green Egg, sneakers. It's insane. So the cult following behind that is just wild.
That's awesome. And then I mentioned it earlier today. Tonight we had pork tenderloin. We used the chicken rub, the dark side of the grill chicken rub on that. I mean, I've made pork tenderloin before in the oven. We've made it on the barbecue. Jody did it. She what did she start with? She started with some avocado oil and then drenched it in the chicken rub, and then she seared it in a frying pan and then put it in the oven and cooked it after that. And it was just absolutely delicious. And adding this made it amazing.
Fantastic.
The other one that I bought at Backyard Barbecue here in St. Albert, which is in the back of the Telus store, by the way,
Yeah.
is the cow cane steak rub.
Yep.
So what is the, is this Fort McMurray reference?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. That's, so that's, it was kind of a joke that turned into a real thing. I needed a rub that you couldn't live without. If you tried it once, you're always going to have that special spot for it, and it's just going to, and that was it. I want people to not be able to cook a steak without reaching for that little guy right there. So that's you want a party in a can, like that's the one that's ready to go. Wait until you see the video that we shot for that. So we actually shot a wicked promotion just for that, and it's wild. It's wild. So it's coming out probably in another couple weeks. We can't release it until my distribution in the States is set up with that cow cane rub. So it's just in the final designs and R&D with the FDA and whatever they do. And as soon as I get the stamp on that, we're dropping that. But it's going to be a gangbuster for sure. I can't wait.
You mentioned the Calgary Boat and Sportsman Show and how you're going to be making an appearance there because you were one time before at the Stampede and stuff. This episode will be released actually on March 11th.
Okay.
So this is the March 11th episode. Beyond March 11th, what do you have coming up? I know you're going to be doing some more traveling. There's probably more trade shows. What are some of the highlights that you've got coming up in 2025 that people listening or watching all over North America or the world would want to know about?
I'll already be in Australia, I think, when you drop this. So that'll be fun.
Okay.
It's a busy year. I got more classes in Newfoundland this year booked, so I'm excited for that. I don't know the dates offhand, June or July, but it'll all be on my website anyway. Or you'll see on Instagram, I'll be posting it like crazy. So there's the meat stocks in Australia. There's a gigantic live fire event in Guatemala that I'm doing. And then after that, New Orleans. We got Hogs for the Cause in New Orleans. That's an amazing party down there. And that's a huge competition. I'll be Memphis in May again. The Key West Invitational. That goes. They're all kind of the same events every year popping up. The UK is new. We're trying to get a class in Scotland as well as cooking. And then Ireland. And I told them I don't want to do anything in Ireland but drink. So that's my deal, is I just want to go there and like puke in a shrub and just say I did it. That's my, yeah. I'm so excited, man. I'm so excited. It's, yeah. And the guys from the UK are the ones that are booking all the accommodations and stuff like that. And they're like, what? I said, yeah, like I'll have pints with you guys, but I'm not going to get belligerent. In Ireland, I'm going to get belligerent. They're like, Tally-ho, all right, let's do that. They're like, that sounds like a time. Okay, that's it. And that was it. Like they totally understood. They had no qualms about it. There you go. It's so, and that's another neat thing about doing this myself. Everybody on the other side of where I'm going is just as excited for me to see the things as I am excited to go and do them. So having a Yorkshire pudding in a pub in England at like 4:00 in the morning because they never close, they're just as excited to see me doing that as I am excited to go and do it. Right? It's super cool. So,
well, I love you, man. And salute all of this for throwing a little bit of meat on a barbecue. You're traveling the world and you're doing your thing. I think it's remarkable. I think it's amazing, and I couldn't be happier for you.
Awesome, brother. Thank you very much.
Reluctantly.
Thank you for listening today. Also, thank you, Shauna and Bonnie at homegirls.ca, a top producing team at Remax Professionals. The Edmonton real estate market is screaming hot right now, especially if you want to sell. If that's something you have in mind, contact them at homegirls.ca.
Reluctantly.